Hey everybody, welcome back or welcome to our Aim Lab Spotlight, where we highlight some of the brightest coaches, players, and experts to improve your gaming performance. Today we have Chris Algieri, who's a former world champion in boxing and kickboxing and has been a nutrition performance specialist for almost 2 decades. He's worked with world-class combat traditional sport athletes and has merged his expertise to help gamers improve their nutrition. We discuss 5 tips for optimized performance, food for brain performance, what are some common nutrition misconceptions, and what are the best ways to create healthy habits. We hope you enjoy. Chris, it's great to have you on.
Taylor, it's great to be here, man. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, likewise. Awesome. Well, I want to jump right into it. And let's first kind of talk about, what are 5 nutrition tips for optimized performance as it relates to gaming?
So I get asked this a lot as it pertains to sports, but also just daily living. And I think that, as human beings, we all have to perform every day, no matter what, whether you're an accountant or a high level, NFL player or a gamer. Like, you need to be able to perform, and performance is being the best version of yourself and going out there prepared and performing. So I think that there's a lot of parallels with gaming to other aspects of other athletes, other sports. And I especially from my most recent research, looking into gaming and looking through, the schedule and whatnot, it's not different than traditional sports and athletes. The time constraints, the volume of training, the competition, the effect it has on the body and the metabolism. There's a lot of parallels to traditional sports, which was news to me, as I'm kind of new to this world, but it's really fascinating stuff. So I think a lot of the things that I normally have kind of schooled my athletes on goes really well for gaming. So in terms of the tips, so number 1 is hydration. And I think that's off the bat, as it always has to be something that has to be brought up. And it's also one of those things that you could literally start fixing now. So most people walking around are in somewhat of a dehydrated state, especially non-athletes or people who are not worried about performance as much. And literally as little as a 1 or 2% loss in body water can affect your performance mentally and physically. So making sure that you're keeping your body in a hydrated state is extremely, extremely important for performance in any realm. And from doing some research for gaming specifically, the cognitive effects is pretty dramatic. So staying hydrated, making personal protocols to be on top of your hydration, so it's not something you have to worry about, I think is really, really important for a gamer, because it's very easy to get lost in the sauce while you're sitting down playing for multiple hours in a row and not thinking you need to drink. Also having to worry about running to the bathroom here and there. So I think it's really important to get on top of that early to make sure that your hydration is where it needs to be, and to have that protocol set so you don't have to worry about it anymore. I tell everybody, very basic, easy way to remember how much water to drink is to take your weight in pounds, divide that by 2, and that's how many ounces that you should aim for as a base of your hydration for that day. So say, like myself, I'm 150 pounds. I'm looking at 75 ounces of water minimum per day, which is pretty easy to do. You're looking at 2.5 liters or so. And that's going to be like my base hydration, depending on ambient temperature, depending on my exercise that day, depending on sweating rates and different things. Also your diet, you can kind of adjust from there. But if you aim for that as kind of like your baseline, you're in pretty good shape.
Awesome. And then real quick on the hydration, do you ever recommend any sort of electrolytes being added to the water or certain things like that?
I do, especially for heavy sweaters or for any kind of any person who's exercising, maybe guys who do hot yoga or people who are doing things like that, where you're going to have that kind of like really, really deep dehydrating sweat, because water is great, but without electrolytes, it's just going to run right through your body. That's kind of how the human body works. The electrolytes is what keeps everything in and allows it to go into your tissues and into your cells to be utilized. So if you do find that if you're drinking water, but you're not really feeling hydrated, or your urine is super clear all the time, it's going through all the time, and you kind of still feel thirsty, you may be lacking electrolytes there. And really the main one there is going to be sodium. So, and that's going to be as easy as just adding some salt to your food. I'm a big fan of sea salt, Celtic sea salt, pink Himalayan sea salt. You could add it to your food, even add it to your water or your drinks, can help you kind of retain some of that fluid when you are in that kind of that dehydrated state. But for the most part, you're going to get it from your food anyway.
Yeah, awesome.
Next is fueling. Thinking about food as fuel. I think that's really important for athletes and gamers to understand that your body runs on the energy it derives from the food that you eat. So the main source of energy for the brain, which is exactly what a gamer is going to rely on, for their performance, is glucose. Glucose comes from the breakdown of carbohydrates. So it's really important to make sure that there's a steady supply of glucose to the brain, because the brain literally is the most metabolic organ in our body and needs a constant supply of energy. So making sure that you have carbohydrates throughout the day, especially I would say for a gamer to be more on the complex side, so you don't have those drastic spikes in insulin and blood sugar and insulin, which you can have a compensatory hypoglycemic rebound, and then you're going to lose performance, brain function. You're going to feel sluggish. That's not what you want to do when you're midway through a big gaming set. So making sure that the carbohydrates are coming from complex sources, those that have higher fiber, mixing them with proteins as well, I think is really important. Avoiding simple sugars. And we're going to talk a little bit later about energy drinks, sports drinks, and the sugar and glucose derived from those and how those can affect the body. So I think making sure that you understand that carbs are fuel for your brain and it's important to have them, but the kind of carb matters. So focusing on more of your complex, lower glycemic carbs, I think is very smart for a gamer to maintain the blood sugar, insulin level throughout the day, so their brain is firing consistently while they're playing, training, whatnot. Also, just kind of a way to kind of balance how your carbs work. I would say keep them more early in the day. Your body's ability to deal with carbohydrates and glucose in your bloodstream is much better in the morning. Much better earlier in the day. Your insulin sensitivity is higher at that point. This will change as an athlete or a person ages. A lot of gamers are pretty young, so they don't have as much of an issue as an older athlete in other sports. But I always say, as you get closer to bedtime, the less carbs you need. The closer you are to a workout, the more carbs you need. The closer you are to a gaming session, the more carbs you need. But the further away you get from activity, the closer you get to sleep, think less and less carbs. More protein, more veggies, more good, healthy fats.
Awesome.
Next, number 3 would be, I would say, find an eating interval that works for you and stick to that. The body likes to be stable. So if you are into intermittent fasting, for example, and you like to do a 16-8, do that consistently. If you're a person who needs your snacks and likes to do that consistently. Myself, I like to snack. I like to eat. I'm not a big fan of intermittent fasting. I've dabbled with it. Doesn't work great for me because of how many workouts I have. But honestly, it's very easy to do because you're just not eating. But if you're going to be that way, be that way. I think the body, tricking the body in terms of nutrition isn't really the best idea. Great if you're doing it for exercising, tricking the body, muscle memory. This guy, we always talk about that, muscle confusion and whatnot. Nutrition is not really the best way to play with that. Your body likes consistency more on that kind of stuff. So I would say pick an interval and stick to that, whether it's 3 squares a day with snacks in between, or you're doing a 16-8 where you're 16 hours you're fasting. So you got your overnight fast, you skip breakfast and you start eating at noon and then eat till 8. So you have that 8-hour window, fine. But get used to that. So your brain, your body is used to that and accustomed to that. That way that, again, you can perform, be consistent, and there's no guesswork. Your body doesn't want to guess when it comes to energy and fuel and performance.
Definitely. And just a side note on that too, I think when people choose a pattern in which they want to follow, what helps with that is it helps kind of form all the other structure and habits around that. So if you're constantly changing up your eating patterns, it's going to be really hard to stick to a set routine where everything else kind of follows. And it may be challenging for certain players. It's definitely not like this now with COVID, but when travel comes into play and you're starting to think about, well, where am I going to have the opportunity to eat if I'm going to be moving? But for this context, I think it's really good for players to think about, okay, let me choose one style. Let me stick with that for at least 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, and see how I feel. And then after that 2 to 4 weeks, if I want to adjust something, then go ahead and do that. But I think bouncing from intermittent fasting to regular meal timing to just a full fast, too much of that is going to be too much variation.
100%. I agree 1,000%. Consistency is really important when it comes to nutrition and performance nutrition, especially. this is a perfect segue into my next point number 4 is so a lot of people get into routines and they stick to what works. They really get into it, but they're eating the same food all the time. So number 4 is to eat a varied and balanced diet. So making sure that you're mixing up your foods, mixing up your protein sources, mixing up your veggies, especially eating colorful fruits and veggies, making sure that you're getting a vast array of nutrients. And nature's a wonderful thing. Colors tell you that there's nutrition in the food that you're eating. So when you see colorful fruits and vegetables, there's a reason when you look at those, your brain goes, that looks delicious. I kind of want some of that. That's naturally ingrained in our body to search out the most nutritious foods. So when you're talking about colors, now don't forget, green is a color. Dark leafy greens have a ton of nutrition in them. So focusing on your dark leafy greens is really important. Focusing on your reds, oranges, yellows, blues, purples, those deep colors. I think that's really important to vary that up. Mix up your plates that way. Mix up your food options to get as much color as you can per plate, per meal, per day. That way you're focusing on getting those micronutrients in as well, rather than just those macros. Eating grilled chicken and broccoli 3 times a day sounds very easy, especially for like a lot of people who are looking like physique competitors and whatnot, but you're missing out on the variety of nutrients that your body really needs in order to perform optimally.
Yeah. I would also say, like, first I always tell players, like, eat the rainbow. You want to make sure you get the full spectrum of colors. And then the other part too is like eating healthy can taste really good. And I
Absolutely.
think, people kind of default to the chicken and broccoli, like, oh man, this is just super boring. It's bland. We can have a lot of great recipes that are very easy to make and really accessible to you. You just have to kind of look a little bit. And there's some really good resources out there. I can put links in the bio here. So
and affordable too.
Affordable. Yeah.
Affordable and flavorful foods. Making your own foods using, tons of veggies and colorful fruits and veggies. It's not expensive like a lot of people think. Eating healthy is not necessarily expensive.
Yep. Awesome.
And then last one, and number 5 is just focusing on protein, making sure you're getting enough protein into your diet. And there's a couple reasons for this. Protein got kind of a bad rap a number of decades ago, rather. But honestly, every nutrient has at some point in the crazy world of nutrition and what we understand, and we're still learning. So I think if you focus first on your protein needs, getting in those amino acids, which is what your tissues are built on, it's a lot easier to manage weight, manage your blood glucose control, being able to, like I said, keeping things stable. So when you're looking at protein, the easiest way to kind of look at it is like for someone who's more like fit and active and maybe who does some exercise and lifts weights, around 1 gram per pound is a good number to look at. It's very easy to calculate. It's like, 150 pounds, 150 grams, which can be a lot. But honestly, if you're focusing on that first, it's a lot easier to build your diet around that. Focus on the protein first, get that in, and then from there, I can have my carbs and my fat kind of down from the tree from there. And it makes it that much easier to kind of construct your own dietary template when you're focusing on that specific number. Carbs is going to change based on your activity. Your protein needs don't really change that much. They do if you're doing resistance training or you don't have any kind of muscle tissue breakdown. But otherwise, you got a basis amount. It's keeping your body together. So that's what protein is really for. Carbohydrates is for energy. Fat is for energy as well. So if there's anyone who's kind of conscious about their weight, conscious about their body composition in terms of how much maybe fat they have on their body and whatnot, focusing on protein is a really smart thing to do. One of the reasons that I love about protein, and when I tell people that come to me or asking me to lose weight or get more fit, and that I always suggest upping their protein, is the fact that there's something called the thermic effect of food. And that is how much energy is utilized during the digestion, assimilation, metabolism, breakdown, and excretion of whatever macronutrient you're eating. So protein, you're losing about 20 to 30% of the energy that you consume to that thermic effect, because it's a very complex a molecule. Your body has to break it down, has to go to your liver. There's all these other processes. The nitrogen has to get taken out. That has to get excreted. Very different from that of carbohydrates and fat, which are much easier for your body to break down, assimilate, and get where they need to go. So in comparison to the other macronutrients, it's 20 to 30% loss for protein. For fats and carbs, you're looking at 3 to 5 to 10% of the total calories getting lost during that breakdown of metabolism. So that's almost like a 2 to 3, 4 threefold difference in those other macronutrients to the protein. That way, that's why we always kind of focus on the protein first for people who are conscious of their weight and their body fat.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that insight. I mean, I think that's one of the easiest things to do too is, start with the protein, lean protein, healthy protein, and then start building the
Lean,
meal
yep.
or your plate around that. I think that's great advice.
Yeah, and that's a great point too, bringing up the plate. And a lot of times when I'm working with others or even talking about myself, think about your plate. Think about how much of that plate is going to be your lean protein, exactly like you said. Is it going to be a quarter of the plate? It's going to be half the plate. Then veggies. I usually like to help my people, especially if they're trying to focus on kind of weight control. Half that plate in greens. Half that plate in greens and colors. Quarter of that plate in your protein source, and then maybe a palm size or a fist of your carbohydrate source. Split that into quadrants there, and kind of figure out your plate from there. That is a tremendous help for a lot of athletes, a lot of gamers, a lot of clients that I work with. Just understanding and seeing that plate.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, those are some great points. So that's the 5, right?
Yep, that's the 5.
Cool.
Yep.
So the next thing I want to talk about is, specifically, what are some good foods for brain health and performance?
Great question. So the brain, as I said, was the most metabolically demanding organ in the body and needs a constant supply. Our whole body focuses on our brain. So because it's the master and commander of everything that's going on in the body. And for gamers and players, obviously that is literally the tool of choice. Biceps don't matter so much when you're playing a game. Your brain really does. So focusing on foods that, for one, are going to keep the circulation moving, right? So blood flow is really important because our brain has a tremendous amount of vasculature in there, and there's blood, and the blood-brain barrier we're constantly getting oxygen and glucose and other nutrients to our brain. So making sure that our blood stays moving is really important. So I always say that like vasodilators, foods that kind of open your blood vessels, allow the blood to flow, are really important for brain function. Things like beetroot juice, which is a vasodilator, dark tart cherries, fatty fish, with those omega-3s and that DHA and EPA, which are really important for brain function. That one specifically, so omega-3 fatty acids, fish oils, fatty fish like tuna, salmon, mackerel, things like that. They contain omega-3 fatty acids, DHA and EPA, which are really, really important for the brain. So much so that literally in early development, through the brain's development through your early years, like that's pretty much exactly what your brain needs to build itself. So those are really important for brain function. Omega-3 fatty acids, vasodilators, like I said, like dark tart cherry, beetroot juice, really important. Pineapple is another one. It's a potent anti-inflammatory. It's good for keeping the blood flowing, keeping the inflammation down. So those are some great items to add to your list to make sure that your brain is functioning optimally.
Awesome. And one of the great things about, just kind of circle back on the meals real quick, and also with brain foods, is one of the easiest ways to make a meal is to make a smoothie. Yes. And one of the favorite things that I encourage a lot of players to do is make a super shake. And literally it could be 8 ounces of water or coconut water. You add a couple handfuls of spinach or some other dark leafy greens. You add some frozen blueberries, maybe a tablespoon of some, healthy fats like peanut butter or almond butter, some sort of nut butter. Then you can add a scoop of either plant-based or whey protein and blend that thing up, and you got a perfect shake, perfect meal.
Perfect meal, perfect way to start your day, perfect way to end a session. I mean, you're getting everything you need, and it's going in fast and getting to where it needs to go fast. That's the thing about when any kind of food that you drink, any kind of smoothie or a post workout, that the kinetics of how fast that leaves your gut's really important. And when you have something that's liquid, or it's already blended like that, it leaves your gut into your bloodstream immediately. It goes right to where it needs to go, whether it's your brain or your working muscles or your recovering muscles. So yeah, that's a great point. And it's also just a great way to get in a lot of those colorful fruits and veggies, like you said. Antioxidants are so important for the brain. So other brain foods include, like you said, blueberries. Again, all those colors that we talked about, really important for brain function.
Awesome. All right. So now I want to shift into, what are some of the misconceptions around nutrition? Because there are a few, and I know you have a few you want to talk about.
Yeah, there's countless, and I feel like there's more every day. But I think some of the classic ones that are out there are, my two favorite that I hear the most are: carbs make you fat, fat makes you fat. And that's just not the way the human body works. That's not the way physiology works. Like I said, carbs are necessary. They're to derive glucose for your brain, of course, but also they power any kind of intense workout that you do, anything to get your heart rate up. Carbohydrates are going to be your preferred source of fuel. And listen, when you're gaming, heart rate's up, like really up. So that's really important to focus on as well. I mean, metabolically, what's going on, even though you're sitting and playing, your heart rate's really high, your body's going to shift into that higher intensity mode, and it's really going to be burning through carbs during that time. So focusing on carbohydrate as a fuel source rather than as something that makes you fat is really important. But that's the thing, you use carbs. So if you focus your carb intake on its utilization, you're not going to have to worry about getting fat. What happens is when you have excess carbohydrates, that's when it's going to get, so excess carbs, if you're not using it in your blood sugar, is either going to get stored as muscle glycogen, which goes into your skeletal muscle, which is what you use for intensive exercise. A little bit's going to go to your liver, and that's what kind of keeps your brain having a supply of glucose while you're sleeping or during a fast. But the rest is going to get stored as fat. So if it's not going to get used or stored in the places that you need it for energy later, it's going to get converted to fat and then stored in your body. So in that sense, too much carbs makes you fat, but too much everything makes you fat. And the same thing about fat. Fat is actually a tremendous energy source. It's fantastic for energy, but it's low and slow. So anything like you and I right now, we're sitting, our heart rates are not very high. Our body is mostly using fat to power our mouths and our eyes and our brain and what's going on. The idea with fat is for anything kind of like long duration, day to day, anything that's not too intense, our body's going to utilize more fat for fuel rather than carbohydrates, which it saves for any time that our heart rate's up, any time that we have to be intense. But again, same thing, excess fat that is not either utilized, as you're going or broken down is going to be stored for storage later, which is going to be stored as fat. So neither carbs or fat make you fat of themselves, but too much of either will.
Yeah. Those are some great points. And I think what I want to touch on now is, let's say you're working with, a high performer, how would you kind of talk through creating this diet plan for them, this meal plan to really best suit their needs? So if you were kind of, just take a few minutes to kind of walk through the series of questions, or maybe questions you would pose and have people that are watching this kind of think about like, oh yeah, this makes sense for me, this doesn't, and then kind of help them build out a day of meals so that they can perform better.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would focus my questions on basically what their daily output looks like. What is their metabolic demand? What does their training volume look like? How many hours a day are they spending in the different heart rate zones, depending on based on intensity? Are you a long distance runner, or are you a power lifter? They're going to have dramatically different metabolic demands and different energy needs throughout the day. Anytime I work with a new athlete in any sport or any genre, I always want to know what their day-to-day looks like, so I have an idea of how to construct what their energy needs are going to be. And that's the thing. Energy needs, carbohydrate needs are so variable person to person, because exercise can be so different. The type of exercise, the duration of exercise, the volume of exercise, the frequency of training, that all affects how you're going to be fueled. So I would say, with any athlete, first thing I'm going to talk about is exactly what I talked about in the top 5. I'm going to talk about the hydration, make sure they're drinking enough water. And then a good way to kind of figure out how much water you need past the point of what I said in the beginning about that half your body weight thing is get an idea of what kind of sweater you are. So if you're going to exercise, if you're going to go to a hot yoga class, or you're going to go for a jog or a run or a lift or a kickboxing class or whatever you're going to do, it's a good idea to weigh yourself before, weigh yourself after. That way you get an idea of what kind of sweater you are, how much weight you're actually losing, how much body water you lose in that practice or session. If you lose a pound of water, 16 ounces, you need more than 16 ounces to rehydrate. You actually need 1.5 times. So you need 3 cups to the 2 cups that you lost. And that's how rehydration actually occurs. So a lot of people are like, oh, I lost a pound. I need to drink a pound. Nope. You need to drink 1.5 pounds. So, and I think that's a common misconception with people, is that after they finish the session, I hear this a lot. They're like, well, I just lost all that weight. I want to keep it off. I don't want to, I'm not going to eat now. I'm not going to go put those calories back in. I'm not going to go, drink the water. Yeah, you should, because that's what your body needs to recover.
It doesn't work like that.
No, it does not work like that. Yeah. I can be 5 pounds lighter in an hour from now, but it doesn't mean I'm 5 pounds lighter. I just lost 5 pounds of water that I need to put back to my body.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you a scenario. Maybe let's kind of walk through a case study. So let's say I'm a aspiring pro gamer.
Yep.
My daily session looks like I play anywhere from 6 to 8 hours, broken up into like 2 or 3 scrim blocks. I start my day around 12 o'clock. I end my night, my early morning, maybe around like 1 a.m. And more times than not, I'll get like a walk in, or maybe I do some light resistance training, maybe 2 or 3 times a day, or 2 or 3 times a week.
Okay. So I'm gonna assume, so if we're going to bed around midnight or 1 a.m. or I'm assuming we're gonna wake up around 9 or 10. So hopefully
maybe
we'll be
later
getting about.
Sometimes.
Okay, good, better. Yeah. The more sleep, the better, honestly, because there's some really good research coming out that athletes perform better in the 8 to 10 range rather than the 7 to 8 range. So hours of sleep per night. So say we're waking up 10, 11. Maybe even 12, and then we got to get ready for our session. I think first thing in the morning, like you had mentioned before, getting in a superfood smoothie, I think, is a fantastic idea. You're getting some spinach, some blueberries, some protein, whether it be plant-based or whey, exactly like you said, some kind of healthy fat to kind of balance your blood sugar, insulin. I think that's a perfect start to the day. Maybe then some kind of activity immediately after. Go for a walk, maybe a somewhat intense stretch session to get ready for sitting and gaming. And then I would focus on maybe a carbohydrate dense snack that has some protein and maybe a little bit of fat. Even something as simple as like a peanut butter and jelly, and a cup of almond milk or something like that could be beneficial. You're getting a good dose of carbs. You're looking at 40, 50, 60 grams of carbs right there. Hopefully getting in like 20 to 25 grams of protein, maybe even a little bit less because of the peanut butter, the almond butter. Or if you wanted to go higher protein, some eggs, something like that, eggs with some oatmeal, or eggs and some toast, or, hard-boiled eggs are a great way to kind of have food already prepared that you don't have to kind of worry about. Big fan for me because I travel so much. So I'm a big fan of hard-boiled eggs. And then fresh fruit, colorful fruit. Get ready for your gaming session. Having a snack with you is going to be important, because I'm sure it's very easy to get lost in a long session. But like we talked about earlier, you want to maintain that blood sugar and glucose. Chobani yogurt, like a Chobani or a Greek yogurt, I should say. So I should not be brand loyal here, but a Greek style yogurt. So the great thing about Greek yogurt is it's essentially just regular yogurt that's strained. So there's more protein, less carbohydrates. So that's a really good way to pack in some good protein on the go. You can always add nuts to that. You can add some fruit to that for flavor. You add honey, things like that. That's a great snack. That's super easy to eat on the go and to kind of pack with you. Fruit is nature's snack, so having any kind of apples or bananas around is really good. Keeping that blood sugar, more stable in case you go, too long. Snacks where I'm sure a lot of guys are not going to be meal prepping and having a lot of, like actual meals. And that's another thing. It's probably very difficult or impossible to eat a real meal while you're in a long session. Not sure how long the breaks are, but so snacking becomes really important during that time. But post session, I would say for like your dinner, there's good research that says that backloading your protein at the end of the day is really beneficial. And even if you're not able to eat a lot of protein throughout the day, because I'm sure a lot of the gamers, and I had the same issue when I worked with Division I athletes in college, because their schedules were so tight between their training sessions, their study halls, their classes. They had very little time to have any meals in the middle of the day. So we would give them a ton of snacks throughout the day, same things I was just kind of mentioning, and we'd really push the limit on their protein at night, really focusing on heavy protein at night. Carbs a little lower, protein really high, good healthy fats, lots of dark leafy greens, lots of veggies, lots of colorful things like that. And there's, like I said, there's good research on like protein pacing, that if you get it in at night, it's really actually beneficial for your body. It's almost as if you were getting it throughout the whole day.
Awesome.
And when we talk about proteins, we want to, like you had mentioned, lean proteins. you're looking at chicken, fish, turkey. You know, when you're talking about like vegetable proteins, they're always going to come with some carbs, but there's plenty of vegetarian or vegan proteins out there. I'm not sure how much of the kind of vegetarian or vegan lifestyle has come into gaming thus far, but makes things a little more difficult, but still manageable.
Awesome. Well, Chris, man, I really appreciate your time. You dropped a lot of good knowledge that I know a lot of people can gain some insight from. Where can people find more about you and what you're up to?
Basically, my Instagram is pretty much my strongest social media. It's just Chris at Chris _ Algieri, and pretty much if you can spell my name, which good luck, you can find me. It's ALGIERI or chrisalgieri.com. That has links to all my social media as well.
Awesome. Thanks, brother. Appreciate your time. And as always, man, great talking with you.
My pleasure, man. Really, really good stuff.
Cheers. Hey everyone, we hope you enjoyed that episode with Chris, as he shares a ton of information that can be integrated into your lives and improve your nutrition. Be sure to check him out on Instagram. And if you dig these videos, like it, subscribe to our channel, and follow us on social media, where we're constantly putting out great content to help you level up your gaming. See you next time.